I welcome you to this episode of Philosophy Lectures with A Prof. Tunde Akande. In today's episode, we're talking about philosophy as a critique of the ideas by which we live. Recall that in our previous lecture, I spoke about philosophy as a search for rational answers to questions that arise in our minds when we reflect on the human experience. And I told you that I was going to come back to talk about philosophy as a critique of the ideas by which we live, which is another definition of philosophy. Okay? So that's why we are here today. Now, what does it mean to say that philosophy is a critique of the ideas by which we live? First of all, the word critique means a rational and constructive evaluation. So, to say that philosophy is a critique of the ideas by which we live is to say that philosophy is a rational and constructive evaluation of the ideas by which we live. Now let's break it further. To say that philosophy is a critique of the ideas by which we live means that philosophy critically examines the foundational concepts, beliefs, and values that shape our lives. These ideas can include ethical principles, notions of truth, justice, freedom, and the nature of reality. Philosophy critically and constructively evaluates assumptions, looks at different perspectives, and seeks clarity about the meanings and implications of these ideas. Rather than accepting them at face value, it scrutinizes whether they are coherent, valid, and whether they serve human flourishing or not. In this sense, philosophy is not just an abstract academic exercise, but a practice that deeply influences how we understand and navigate our world. It allows us to question and examine societal norms, personal values, and the institutions that guide our daily actions, leading to a more reflective and intentional way of living. Philosophy critiques the ideas by which we live in a number of ways, often through questioning, analysis, and debate. And examples of such ways include the following: everyday language and communication. Very often, you hear people say, for example, that with God, all things are possible. But the philosopher will want to ask, is it possible for God to tell lies? Is it possible for God to be wicked? Is it possible for God to be unjust? Is it possible for him to be partial? The statement above, that is, the statement that with God all things are possible, implies that God can do all these things. But I wonder if this is what people really have in mind when they say that with him all things are possible. Very often also, people write by way of advert, come and buy your cold drinks here. But are they your drinks? If they were your drinks, would you need to buy them? Again, people often say that success is the achievement of one's heart desire. But if, for example, an armed robber has a hard desire to rob a bank of 10 million naira and he carries it out, would that be success? Recall that such an achievement is one that will give him trouble afterwards. So, can the achievement of a hard desire that carries the seeds or the possibility of trouble at a later time be true success? It will appear then that success cannot just be the achievement of a hard desire, but the achievement of a worthy goal. To take another example, some people define miracle as an impossibility that becomes possible. But how can an impossibility become possible? The very meaning of impossibility is that which cannot happen, or that which is not possible. When a thing happens, it means it was never an impossibility. For if it were, it will never happen. The very fact that it happens is the evidence that it was not an impossibility in the first place. Philosophy also questions moral systems. For example, philosophers like Immanuel Kant and John Stuart Mill have questioned and critiqued different systems of ethics. Kant, for example, argued for deontological ethics, where actions are judged by their adherence to rules or duties, while Mill promoted utilitarianism, where actions are judged by their consequences, aiming to maximize happiness. A philosophical critique of the death penalty, for example, might lead to broader questions about justice, retribution, and the value of human life. In political philosophy, philosophers have criticized power structures. Philosophers like Karl Marx and John Locke have critiqued the political and economic systems of their time. John Locke's ideas on natural rights helped to shape democratic governments, while Karl Marx critiqued capitalism for creating inequality and alienation, advocating for a more collective society. Karl Marx's critique of capitalism questions the fairness of economic systems where wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few while many live in abject poverty. His critique forces a reconciliation or a reconsideration of the values of freedom, fairness, and equality that underpin capitalist societies. Philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Friedrich Nietzsche have criticized traditional values or traditional ideas of freedom and human agency. Sartre argued that humans are condemned to be free, meaning that we have no choice but to make choices, or we have no choice but to be free, which is both empowering and anxiety-inducing. The existentialism of Sartre challenges people to take responsibility for their actions and decisions, claiming that humans often hide behind societal norms and external authorities to avoid confronting their freedom and the responsibility that comes with it. Simone de Beauvoir, in her work The Second Sex, critiqued traditional gender roles, arguing that woman is a social construct imposed by a patriarchal society. Similarly, philosophers like Judith Butler have criticized ideas of gender and identity, claiming that gender is performative and not an essential or fixed trait. Other philosophers have, however, argued that society is better served by upholding sex roles, that gender has its foundation in nature, that we cannot have equality between men and women in the sense of both sexes playing the same roles, and that since nature makes it man and woman, we should maintain the identity and integrity of both sexes and pursue equity and fairness for both sexes instead of pursuing equality, which for them is both impossible and undesirable and even unnatural. Philosophers like René Descartes and David Hume have critiqued the very nature of reality and human knowledge. Descartes questioned what can be known for certain, leading to his famous cogito ergo sum, which means I think, therefore I am. While Hume critiqued our ability to know cause and effect, arguing that our assumptions about causality are based on habit, not certainty. Descartes' radical skepticism about the external world forces us to reconsider how much of what we know is based on assumptions and whether we can truly be certain about anything beyond our own thinking minds. Philosophers like Ludwig Wittgenstein and Jacques Derrida have critiqued how language shapes our understanding of reality. Wittgenstein argued that the limits of our language are the limits of our world, suggesting that what we can express and think is constrained by language. Derrida's deconstruction shows how meaning is never fixed but always shifting. Derrida's critique of language and meaning might be applied to legal texts or religious scriptures, where he shows that different interpretations are always possible, thereby challenging the idea of a single true interpretation. Again, however, this line of thought has been criticized, insisting that the limit of our knowledge or perception is not the limit of the world, since the world exists first before we perceive it, and it is not our perceptions or knowledge of them that brings them into existence. These examples show that philosophy does not just offer theories, but actively interrogates the underlying assumptions, values, and frameworks that govern our thoughts, societies, and personal lives. By so doing, it helps us to critically and constructively evaluate our ideas to see if they have negative or untoward implications, so that we can drop them for better ones. That way, philosophy makes us see beyond the obvious, propels us towards the discovery of truth, as truth is logical and does not contain contradictions. So this is what it means to say that philosophy is a critique of the ideas by which we live. It means that philosophy is a rational and constructive evaluation of the ideas by which we live. It is necessary to critically evaluate our ideas because philosophy is ultimately a search for truth. And truth has as one of its characteristics the fact that it is not contradictory, it is logical. So truth does not contain contradiction. So if you are searching for truth, you must search for those doctrines, those postulations, those submissions that do not contain contradictions, because that is the characteristics of truth. Truth is logical. Truth is not contradictory. And so, in the search for truth, philosophy makes us see things beyond the obvious. You know, from some of the examples I've given, you can see that many people say these things, many people use these expressions without realizing that they contain these, implications. And so it is only when you see them, when you think about them critically, when you see them beyond the obvious, that you begin to realize these other implications that they carry. So that is the essence of probing deeper into reality, the essence of looking at things beyond the obvious, which is why in philosophy we constructively and rationally evaluate the ideas by which we live so as to see if they carry negative implications so that we can drop them for better ones that will promote human flourishing. So this is what it means to say that philosophy is a critique of the ideas by which we live. I hope you have enjoyed what you have had. If you did, I want to encourage you to like and share this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on the notification icon so that you can always get notified each time I upload a new video. As I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye for now and have a lovely day.